Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Strong Principles. My name is Larry Medina.
I'm Rob Delacruz.
And I'm Zach Bragg. And on today's episode, we are discussing 5 questions. And basically, it's our takes on the most asked fitness questions when you're first starting out. And so we get these questions a lot. And so we can kind of go through each of them, give our takes on them, what our thoughts are on them. The first question that we're going to ask, that we get asked a lot, is should I eat before or after a workout? And I think this is kind of a loaded question, but Rob, you want to start off with your take?
Yeah, so a lot of times people, they're not sure if they should eat. Sometimes they come in and work out, they feel kind of faint, so it'd be real dependent. But if you're doing strength, you can have like a meal and it won't be that bad on you. I wouldn't have a big meal by any means. Yeah, it's called like I'm fed. But if you're doing conditioning, no, I wouldn't even, like at best, maybe a little bit of fruit that you can take down. But what happens is it's going to not make you feel really well because it's going to pull a lot of that blood out of that digestion when that heart rate's really high. So that's definitely like I wouldn't eat anything close to doing conditioning.
Yeah,
Really?
Yeah.
So I would think it's the opposite personally. Like as a non-fitness guru, right?
Yeah, I think a lot of people don't like the feeling of a super full stomach when doing a workout, and especially when doing cardio, because they can feel a little bit sluggish. But what you don't realize is a lot of times that gives you a lot less energy for a cardio workout. I think I agree with Rob. I think for strength workouts, I like to have a little bit of something. Actually, really, for both, I like to have a little bit something before, and then after. I really like to get the protein intake super high. And there was this old thinking that you had to eat an hour after your workout because there's an anabolic window and you have to get all the protein in. That's not really true. I do think getting enough nutrients in post-workout within 24 hours is extremely important, but there is no such thing as a post-anabolic workout. And I think it's also dependent on what time you're working out. So if you're a super early morning person, you might not be able to eat right before. And so then your meal might need to look a little bit different during dinner the night before, making sure that you're getting enough carbs in the night before so that way you're sustained through the workout the next day. If you're working out in the afternoon, obviously you're going to be eating throughout the day. You might not need as big of a meal before. You might not need as much of nutrients right before, so it could be a little bit of a smaller meal.
Now, does body type matter, right? Because like I think of like the endurance athlete, and obviously that's extreme, right? But I'm just trying to think of like, does it matter like if you're like somebody with not a lot of muscle, but are going to go for like a 5K, 10K run or whatever, versus somebody who is, who may have expensive muscle tissue.
Yeah, you're going to run into issues, and like that's where like the carbohydrates come in. But it's got more to do with the type of workout than it does the body type, most likely.
Okay.
Like I said, like a conditioning, like a real intense conditioning workout, you eat too close to it, you're definitely not going to feel good at all.
You're gonna cramp.
Yeah. And a lot of times with people too is they weren't really doing much. So then they start working out. And so they're not sure, they don't feel right. Their blood sugar's all over the place. It takes a little while for your body to get used to working out in the first place, especially in the morning too.
Yeah.
I get a lot of people like maybe like a little bit of a banana or like some great, like just a little bit before at first. But a lot of times if you ate right the night before, you should be okay with a normal class workout. That's not a couple hours long. Anything past like an amount of time, then you're going to run into some issues.
Yeah. I think that's a good response to this answer ultimately too. If your diet is really clean and sharp, you're going to be almost okay either way. And you're going to learn what works for your body. Everybody's a little bit different with this. I don't love to eat a lot before any type of workout. I'll eat a little bit of something. That's completely okay. But I do notice if I'm eating a lot beforehand, I get crampy. I feel sluggish, a little bit slower. So I think ultimately the answer is make sure you get enough nutrients after. Make sure your diet's really clean, and then you're going to have to just pay attention based off of what time you're working out. And what type of workout it is.
And what types of food you're eating too.
And what type of
highly processed food runs through your system real quick. Your blood sugar might go all over the place and spike or get too low. So those things are super dependent. Like Zach was saying about him, like I might be coming to work at 4:30, don't work out till 8, then I eat after that. So I'm not really taking much in besides like fluid before I eat, and I'm always fine conditioning or strength.
Makes sense.
Yeah. All right. So our second question then is, how many meals should I have a day? So I can start off with this one. How many meals should I have a day? I think this is really also a dependent question on the person, based off how you feel. For me, I really only have 2 to 3 meals a day. They're larger meals, but I'm making sure that I'm hitting them within my protein goals. And I think that's the main spot that I look at. And that's the main spot that I look at for most of my clients as well, as I just tell them, especially starting out, which is what we're talking about here. Let's just make sure we hit our protein goals, making sure we're sleeping enough and making sure we're hydrating enough. So whatever it takes, how many meals that takes for you to be able to hit your protein goal for that day is however many meals it is. Now, given this kind of goes with the workout timing and schedule, you're going to eat around that as well. But if you're hitting your protein goals, it really doesn't matter. I wouldn't be, some people like a little bit smaller meals and eating more meals throughout the day. I've always found it easier, especially if you're a busy person, just to have your meals prepped and ready to go 3 meals a day.
Yeah, like your pillar meals, like at least like 3 or 4 of them during the day. But also too, like people's schedule depends. If you miss breakfast, then all of a sudden you're kind of like trying to jam in whatever hours you got left, or you're fasting. It's going to be the same thing. You only have like this window. You got to kind of like jam it in. I personally, I always go for the 3 meals, and they're 3 good sized meals, and try to first protein is first, whole foods mostly. And sometimes, I'm at work, I get caught up. I miss it's a breakfast and a dinner, and then those have to be real big meals to make up for the miss of the third.
Yeah.
Now, what about like snacking in between, right? Like is it, so yeah, we have the meals, we have the big meals. What are the thoughts on snacking?
My take on snacking is it's okay depending on the snack, obviously. Again, if we're going back to the protein goals, your snack should be protein emphasized. And so if you're someone who, my wife's a perfect example. She needs to eat. She can't eat a lot in one sitting. And I think a lot of women have the same thing going on. And so for her, she has to eat kind of a lot throughout the day, but small amounts. And so she has to place an emphasis on protein with each of those meals. So her snacks tend to be, we grilled chicken for the week, and we have some grilled chicken and then maybe some rice, which sounds like a meal to somebody, but it's just a small amount. So we could consider that a snack. So I think as long as you're emphasizing protein with the snacks, they're completely okay. Ideally, we still have those pillar meals, whether it's 2 or 3 of them, where you're really hitting a big amount of your protein and then the other macronutrients that you need for the day.
Yeah, and I'm good with snacks, and people I work with is good with snacks. I don't really eat them, but my meals are pretty big, 11, 12, 1,400 calorie piece at a time, so I'm not really very hungry in between. But I know there's other people that don't, and they snack. But as long as it's good quality foods, where people go wrong is they start picking like snack foods and chips and other and pretzels and things like that. That's where you're going to run into some issues when you do that.
And how is the snacks also affecting your main meals? So if you're somebody who, what I always tell my clients is stay away from the snacks where they're addictive. You can just keep eating them. A lot of people are like, oh yeah, cashews and almonds, they're good. Yeah, and they're okay in small amounts. But then you open up a bag of cashews and it's like chips. Yeah, you can just keep on eating them and eating them. And then what happens, like if you do that at 1 p.m. or 2 p.m., you get later into the day and you're like, oh man, I'm not really that hungry, and then you don't eat enough at night. And so it's just about being
or you snack
selective.
Too close to your meal.
Yeah.
And so you're snacking like before your meal, and then also you're like, well, I'm not really hungry for this, but I ate because I ate all that.
Right.
Yep.
So I think to answer that question, as long as you're hitting your protein goals and your nutrient goals, it's okay if you're just having 2 or 3 meals a day that are a little bit bigger meals, still hitting those goals. It's okay if you're having 5 or 6 meals a day and they're a little bit smaller, like snacks, as long as you're hitting those nutrient goals. So all that's okay. All right, question number 3. What's the best diet for fat loss? So
I get asked that a lot.
Yeah.
Don't eat.
Yeah. Well.
Yeah, we get asked this question a lot. And in older thinking, we used to be much, not the term simpler, but we used to just have these, cutouts. Oh, just do paleo, just do keto. We could just announce a diet. But it's really not like that. What you have to look for is what's going to be the most sustainable, what's going to give you the best energy throughout the day. And then this is also dependent on what your exercise level is. Are you going to be exercising 3 times a week, 4 times a week? One of the questions goes into that too. But for somebody just starting out, the best diet is going to be making sure you're hitting enough protein, making sure you're having enough carbs or fats, depending on what your body suits better for throughout the day to give you enough energy, but also to see some fat loss changes. And really that does come down to your calorie intake and your protein intake.
Yeah, the calorie intake is definitely a real thing. And but like when we first start working with them, first thing we do is like, hey, let's concentrate on a protein. We don't want to hit them up with too much. So we concentrate on a protein. They start getting consistent with that. In that process of it, I always try to push them to more whole foods as much as you can. Get the protein, get more whole foods. You'd be really surprised where people can get to just by that alone. Then you start dialing in a little more. We try not to give them too much up front.
That makes sense. Yeah, no, that makes sense because like it's a struggle. It's a struggle overall, right? Because like me and my wife will joke around and be like, "Oh, tonight we're gonna eat air," right? Like that's on the menu because like you're just trying to. It's just a struggle if you're trying, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think to your point, don't change a whole lot. Try and up your protein. You do feel fuller throughout the day.
Yeah.
You know, but you have to like. I feel like for me, the major difference is like some people don't think that they're not full if they're not stuffed, right? And so like understanding that like if you feel stuffed, you ate too much, right? Because that's when you feel bad, that's when you feel sleepy, that's when you feel tired and all that other stuff. So I feel like understanding, getting to know your body. So I think your original thing is like spot on of like, don't change a whole lot. Just try and up your protein, you know, baby step it. Because if you go all in, I feel, to your point, Zach, it's unsustainable.
Yeah, you change too much. You know, when we first go with the protein, a lot of times, and I get this with women a lot, if you only want to do small things, it's depending on where they're coming from. Two is going on is that you want to give them enough protein to get the building blocks to build muscle. But a lot of people misunderstand like satiation and feeling full and bloated. Like especially women. They like correlate that together and they're not the same thing. Foods that make you feel full, that like whole foods, because they don't digest as fast. Foods that you digest really quickly and you don't feel full all the time, there's something done to it in order for it to go through your system that quickly.
Yeah.
So you got to be kind of careful with that understanding.
Makes sense.
So it's not the answer that most people want to hear, you know, because when most people are just starting out, they want to hear here's exactly what you eat, you know, like a paleo. Here's exactly what you're going to eat, and you're just going to follow this to a T. But it really is the small adjustments. And we will say when we're talking about fat loss, starvation does not equal fat loss. And so a lot of people want to just start eating a whole lot less. And so oftentimes, what's the best diet for fat loss? Well, first we got to take a look at too is what are you eating right now? And so a lot of my clients, I'll have them, hey, just take a week. Let's write, and don't change anything. Just write down everything that you're eating throughout this week. And that kind of gives us a basis for what your metabolic rate is, and then the foods that you're eating, and then we can make those small adjustments from there. But that sustainability and those small adjustments is going to feel like you're not having to do that much. You're not having to change your life that much, rather than the all-in method where you're jumping all in and then you're maybe on it for 2 weeks and then you have this big fall off and you're off of it for a week or two. And then you're starving yourself for those 2 weeks and then you're just getting and so it's just a really bad give and take there, and you're not able to make any changes. So those small adjustments over time, whole foods, work the best.
Because I'm glad, Zach mentioned something. There's a big difference between fat loss and weight loss. Mm-hmm. So we're going for the fat loss. Mm-hmm. The weight loss is, most of the time what people do, you end up losing a bunch of muscle at the same time, and that is not what you want to do. Because we've had plenty of clients that had weight loss and come back and still be about the same or higher body fat percentage.
That's crazy. That's crazy.
I've had it a lot.
Yeah. That's crazy. The other thing too is that what people should be reminded of is that they didn't gain weight in a short amount of time. So Correct. Be patient on that side too.
Yeah. And if the faster, like Rob mentioned, the faster you see the scale go down, the more likely, I mean, depending on the person, but the more likely that muscle mass is coming off quicker, because muscle mass is not energy sparing whatsoever. It requires a lot of energy to sustain muscle mass. And so when you're not giving your body enough energy through nutrients, it gets rid of what is the most expensive energy components, and that's your muscle. So it just starts shedding that. So those small adjustments and make sure that it's focused on fat loss. So question number 4, it leads into it. Can you gain muscle and lose fat at the same time? So most of the time, the term we use to qualify this is body recomposition. And my take on it, the answer for me is yes, you can. Now, given this is such a loaded question in fitness and a lot of people don't understand it, is because most of the time, how we think of it is you'd have to be in some sort of caloric surplus to gain muscle. You'd have to be in some sort of caloric deficit to lose fat. And although those can be true, a person can gain muscle, especially depending on where they're at. And for a person who's just starting out, which means likely they're just starting to get into strength training, if their training looks good, if their sleep looks good, and they're hitting their protein goals, even in a slight caloric deficit, they can still gain muscle and begin to lose fat at the same time. So this kind of goes into what we were just talking about too.
Yeah, and it's got a lot to do. Is that protein in a good place? Also, it's got to do with the type of workouts you're doing. If you're like very high conditioning based, then the likelihood of you losing muscle is high, because that's, cardiovascular is going to be a little bit of it's going to be catabolic. So if you're mostly strength training with just like a little bit of conditioning, then the likelihood of you actually doing, they call it like the Goldilocks zone, of you're actually losing body fat percentage and putting on some muscle, and it's a recomposition. That takes a while, and the slower you do it, the better off the likelihood of that.
Yeah. I think the main thing there is that the caloric deficit has to be small. The bigger
maintenance, like either one of those two. Yeah, like a maintenance around there. Because what's going to happen is if you're at a maintenance and you're strength training, you're going to add that muscle a little bit on. So then that in actuality is going to start to put you in a little bit of a deficit, because you're going to cost a little more in calories just to move around during the day or when you're working out.
Yep.
Makes sense.
Muscle starts to burn more calories, so as you gain muscle, if you can keep it at maintenance, focus on your strength training, making sure that you're getting enough sleep for recovery, making sure that you're hydrating enough. This is definitely possible, and then kind of taking into consideration some of the things we talked about with the other questions with fat loss. So question number 5, how often should I work out? Again, this is kind of can be a loaded question depending on the person, but we're talking about somebody who's just starting out. And so similar to our question 3, best diet for fat loss, it starts with small adjustments. It starts with small changes over time. And so for each person that might be different, but just starting off, if you're brand new to training, with once a week can make a difference. Going up to 2 or 3 times obviously will have an effect as well. And it also depends on the type of workout.
Yeah, and it's really dependent when a person comes in, where they're coming from. When you're first starting out and they want to be gung-ho, but they weren't working out before, like we'll start them out 1-2 days a week at the most, because if you start out too high, you're not ready prepared for that. You want to build into it, and then you're just going to end up going backwards. If you're already working out 3 or 4 days a week, then we're going to go and say, okay, let's get kind of close to that. But it's really dependent where you're starting from.
That makes total sense, because I do notice that, I work out with some people who haven't really worked out, and like recently they've been like, all right, let's go ahead and get in. So they come over and I'm like, yeah, let's go ahead and get a workout in. But I don't push it more than like once or maybe twice a week at most, because they're not mentally, they're not ready for it.
Yeah.
They're mad at me for even suggesting the workout, So at that point I'm like, all right, let's get you into a rhythm. Let's get things going. And then once you feel comfortable, then we can up it.
Yeah, because we'll get people that come in, they haven't been working out, and they want to go home. Well, I'm ready to go. I want to do my 5 or 6 days a week, and that's always a recipe for a disaster. And like we slowly bring them up to days.
Yeah, and that's always a recipe for disaster, because burnout is such a real thing when it comes to training, and until it has become a real habit of yours, it's not going to be really ingrained in what you're doing. And so most people want a cookie cutter answer where you have to train at least 3 times a week in order to see a change. It's just not true, especially just starting out. You can see changes now. The type of workout it should be, if you're only going to be starting off with once or twice a week, my take on it has to be strength training. You have to, do some resistance work, do some strength training in order to start to make those changes. And then as we develop, we can start to work. And during this, you can still keep your activity decently high.
Yep.
You can still be walking. Maybe you take your kids to the playground, whatever it is, you can still keep your activity level high. It just doesn't mean you have a set focus day where you're doing cardio work. If you're only doing 2 days, those 2 focus days should be strength training.
Yep. No, I totally agree with that. The problem with all that, right, is these are all great questions. Part of the problem that I see personally is that if you go into social media, everybody has like, oh, here's the hack. Here's how much protein should be, like everything's just being shoved down our throats right now, like with all these fitness influencers on like, you got to be gung-ho and you got to be doing this, that, the other, that it becomes confusing to everybody, right? Like everybody just needs to know that you got to just chill out a little bit.
Yeah. The industry's really bad. And like when it comes to how often I should work out, you'll get about 50% of like strength training from one day. You go to 2 days, you're getting around 75% around there. So then you go 3 days. So now you're at like 80-ish to 90. So like the first day, you're getting the most. The second day now, that's a good percentage. Now you get the third, it's a smaller percentage. So you go 5 days, it's like very small percentages.
Yep.
It's
Agreed.
a diminished return. And so it's a really loud signal, even just 1 or 2 days a week. So, well, very good. So that's our takes on the most asked fitness questions when starting out. Biggest takeaways we could say from today is start off with small adjustments. Pay attention to your body, place an emphasis on strength work, making sure that you're getting enough recovery with sleep and hydration and your diet. And then we always recommend speaking to a coach, a well-qualified coach here at Vero Strength. We can do that. And then basically they can guide you and kind of work with you as more of these types of questions pop up on your fitness journey.
Yeah, and try not to pay attention to any of the nonsense on social media.
Yeah. All right.
Agreed.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. This has been Strong Principles.